Hi, Christine. She's saying hello from the chat.
Oh,
and
yeah,
Steven's here now. He says, hit that like button and subscribe, everybody.
Thank you.
It's great. So we're revealing, it's kind of been available to view from the welcome page. So some of you may have already kind of started checking it out. But this, the idea for the cookbook actually came from last year's WikiTree Day. We started thinking about, well, what can we do for next year? And the idea for gathering stories and pictures from the community kind of came from that. So on the space page for the cookbook, another idea for a space page. We've kind of been talking about that a lot this weekend, is space pages ideas.
Yep.
So you can see here that the post went out on G2G. It's kind of requesting from the community for y'all to submit your recipes so that we could put something together. And we thought for a while nothing was going to really, it kind of seemed like nothing was going to happen. But boy, you guys all gave us some really great recipes, and stories were so great. And the pictures, really, it's just been wonderful to look at everything that y'all has shared. Yeah, I've just really enjoyed going through it all. So I just wanted to, like Betsy mentioned before we got started here, we wanted to make sure to give a shout out to the different other WikiTree members that helped us. So David Randall, Stephen Greenwood, and Pat Brunson really did a lot of work in basically kind of taking all the different kind of formats that the information came to us in, and kind of trying to make it into a kind of a universal, so you could follow like the measurements and things like that. So it was easier for everybody to understand. And hopefully you all really enjoy what we have here. We have 147 pages.
It sure did. It was a slow boil, and then it took off. And wow, I mean, I was involved more at the beginning with the collection and the recruiting of recipes, and then at the very end doing one of the final proofs, and I was just blown away.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
So great. Oh yes, Lisa. Yes, there is one biscuit recipe we did get from the Appalachia Project.
Moonshine biscuits.
Yes. Yeah. So that's really fun. Yes, we got recipes from all over the place.
Yeah.
So we can kind of go through that.
Yeah, and I love the way that you can cross-reference and look at all the recipes through different filters. So
yeah. So the different sections are broken out into different PDF documents, just because it was such a big file that we had to break it out for y'all. So the first section I just want to kind of touch on is the first pages, the table of contents. So we have the listing by main dishes, side dishes, and the page numbers. And these links will take you into those sections. So you can either get to the sections from the space page or from the main index here, or the table of contents. So the first section, the main dishes, here's the first one, beef roll. So what we've tried to do is list out the name of the recipe and then the ancestor that the profile or that the recipe is from or about, and it will link you into that person's profile. And then the WikiTreeer who submitted the recipe, also linking you to their profile. So you see we have the recipe, and then if there's a little story or memory about the ancestor and the recipe, then that's there. And then Greg Clark big shout out to Greg Clark and his fan chart app. He actually gave me a little link to I think it's the preview version, and he was able to fix it for me. So I was able to create these fan charts for each of these ancestors in a kind of more efficient manner. So you'll see where we were able to do it. We have a fan chart for each of the ancestors, and you can click on this, and that'll take you to their family tree. Oh, and we have Pat Brunson is in the live chat.
Hi, Pat.
Thank you, Pat. That's great. So that kind of gives you a breakdown of how the layout is. So,
and some of them we have photos of the dish and the WikiTree's and the ancestor, some combination thereof.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really very interesting that there were so many different types of recipes and from all over. And so that's really a lot of fun. Another thing that the cookbook has, and it's the last option on the space page, and it was something that Greg kind of brought up, was breaking it out in a different index for these different types. So we have an index by the ancestor, an index by the recipe or by the submitter, and then also by the birthplace of the ancestor and the decade for that ancestor if we know it.
Yeah.
So a couple of the profiles were private, so we weren't able to gather that information, but for the most part, they were available. So you can see we had a lot of submitters, and some submitters submitted multiple, which was great. It was so much fun, and you'll notice kind of the majority of the recipes are desserts.
I'm not surprised.
And there were a couple of ancestors that had multiple recipes also that were attributed to them. So that was kind of cool. So there's a couple pages of index by the ancestor. And then this is just a listing of the recipe titles in alphabetical order for you. And here we go. We have index by ancestor birthplace, which was really cool to see all the different places for that.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I have a long list that I want to try.
I know. Me too, really. Okay, and then so the earliest birth decade is 1830 to 1839. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
For the oldest recipe there. And then their most recent ancestor was from the decade of 1950 to 1959. So that's 120 years of recipes that we have in here. So let's see. I just wanted to take us back to the table of contents. So you can see there's a lot of different types of recipes. I just want to kind of highlight a few of them that I thought were really cool. They're all wonderful, actually. It's kind of hard to pick. But we have what I thought was interesting. We had condiments that were submitted that was pretty interesting to me. I hadn't thought about that. So let me just go. Here we go. Mustard for table use. I thought this one was really interesting. So before, you could go to the store and just go get your mustard. Well, this is before that time. This is how to make mustard for table use. So that's really fun. And the little story about that.
Yeah, the stories are wonderful.
Yeah.
Especially when they have a direct memory of that ancestor, if it's grandparent or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the pictures. Pictures are always so wonderful to have.
Uh-huh.
And Allison has a nice picture of her family member here. Peter and Edith Stoner.
Mhm.
So very, very cool. And Alexis sharing, she shared multiple. And Christina, this one was really interesting from the ancestors from Austria.
Uh-huh.
That was really interesting. It's I don't know how to pronounce that. Lip Tower Tour.
I don't know.
So that looks really interesting. And then here's the picture of Christina and her ancestor.
Wow, I see a resemblance.
Yes.
For sure.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Like I said, I really truly had so much fun putting this all, working with everybody to put it all together.
Yeah.
It was really enjoyable.
And I have to say that where there was a picture of the WikiTree's who was contributing the recipe, I especially enjoyed that because some people I've seen on Zooms, but mostly not. And so it's so nice to put a face to the name.
It really is. You talk to somebody on Discord or through email or whatever, and it's really great to actually have a face to go with the name.
Yeah.
And I thought this one was really interesting. German egg noodles. So I want to try. This is one of the ones I want to try. And this was submitted by Allison Gardner. And she has a photo here of her ancestor. So I thought that was so wonderful. And Lefse. Is that how you pronounce it?
I think so.
Okay. Patricia submitted this recipe, and she has a recipe of her ancestor. But then she also has a picture of she's making it. And actually, you can't see, but behind the camera is her daughter taking the picture. So I thought that was really wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So she has fond childhood memories of sitting around a large table with many cousins, waiting for a hot, off the griddle lefse to hit my plate. So nice. And then here's, of course, the biscuit recipe as
biscuits. And so if anyone in the chat doesn't know why we're always shouting biscuit at random times, it's because the Appalachia Project, that's their informal greeting for one another.
That's right.
You say, Appalachia, biscuits.
So this one was interesting to me. I didn't realize that they would use moonshine or the substitution would be vodka.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really interesting to me. And then she was talking about, and something I heard a lot was that the ancestor, and actually it came up in the YouTube video that we did with, I'm drawing a blank. The one that did the cookbooks.
Nellie Alexander.
No, it was the first day. I'm totally drawing a blank.
I know the presentation.
Eleanor Brinsko.
Mm-hmm.
She did the presentation about the female ancestors and recipes, and how often we come across and hear, well, I don't know what the measurements are, because the ancestor they just made it without even using measurements, because it's like muscle memory. They
eyeball it or measure with love.
Exactly. So this is great. She gave us some pictures of the rest of the biscuits in the process, in the griddle. I thought that was cool. And then, of course, a wonderful image of her ancestor and the saying, don't be buying that low-fat, high-dollar butter. Buy real butter. Keep the butter real, cold in the icebox. We call it a moonshiner biscuits, so you don't forget to add the moonshine. Get the oven nice and hot. Be sure to wave your hand when you say nice and hot, as if the hand wave explains the temperature.
Lisa was asking, oh, is there a non-alcoholic substitute for the vodka or the moonshine? And I think the great thing about our cookbook is the recipes were all contributed by WikiTree's. So I would just send a private message to Melissa and ask her opinion on that. What would you recommend?
Yeah, definitely. You can just click on her name here on the page for her profile. Go over and just leave her a message.
Yep.
See what she says.
For sure.
That's great. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, and let's see. Side dishes. We had so many side dishes. We had a part 1 and a part 2.
The sides are the best.
Yeah. So Mindy had submitted this recipe for baked beans, and has a great picture here of the table for her family table and the story to go with it. She says she would always catch me when I tried to taste from the stove and would then gently smack the back of my hand. As an adult, she did it. So that's great. And so we have a picture of Mindy and her ancestor, Irene Thomas, and then the fan chart. Just some really great information. And Amy gave us a recipe for baked corn from her mom. And she says she wrote it out for me not long before she passed away. So what a great memory to have of that. So she had to kind of interpret what was on part of the recipe, but she got it figured out. And it's been a family tradition at every Crawford potluck and family gathering since I was a little kid. So that's wonderful. And there's Amy and her mom. Just wonderful. This one I thought was very interesting.
Oh, I remember this one.
This was one of the first ones, I think. Warren had submitted this recipe, and of course it has sources because we're WikiTree. We have to have sources. So this was a story he found in the newspaper about Boston baked beans as they should be. So it's a story, an apology, and a recipe. So that's really a lot of fun to read the newspaper article about that. And of course, here's the source. And then we have the original person, the ancestor. It's not actually somebody's ancestor. It's not his ancestor, but it's there is a profile for this person out on WikiTree. Mm-hmm. So looks like we need some grandparents for her filled in. If anybody's interested in doing that, that'd be great. And here's the original recipe that was entered in the newspaper a couple days before that the other article is like correcting, basically, right? Because in this article, the person saying they're Boston baked beans, but then the ancestor says those aren't Boston baked beans. Here's the recipe for real Boston baked beans. So
setting the record straight.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was really fun, interesting story there. So, and here's a recipe from Margaret. It had submitted quite a few, and a couple for each of her ancestors. This one's from her ancestor, Mary Estella Robe. And I love the little story snippet she gave us about her ancestors. So she says that this ancestor was ladylike in every way and hated to get messy. When she was taught to make biscuits, she was told to get her hands into the biscuit dough. She declined and thereafter mixed the dough with a fork. She contributed 2 recipes to the Brownsville, Oregon Presbyterian Church Ladies Missionary Society Cookbook in 1909. The first is for this cabbage salad recipe. So what a wonderful memory, really. And again, talking about those church cookbooks, and learning more about ancestors through those. And here's a picture of her. There's the ladylike lady. just things that show us the personalities of our ancestors, even more than, the where they lived at a certain time. This is like more into actually how they were.
Right.
So it's really nice. So Crusoe submitted a recipe for Cappelli. Hope I'm saying that right.
That's correct. Cappelli.
Okay. And so Conchetta d'Alessandro, and it's a wonderful recipe. I want to try it. Another one. I'm going to be busy cooking. And a good picture of her making the recipe, her grandmother making the recipe, which is wonderful. And here's another picture of the recipe. And here she is with her. So that's wonderful. Like I said, we love seeing all these wonderful pictures. Her Nona. All right. So we have, this one is corn chowder. WikiTree's Jamie Karagianis. A recipe handed down from her grandmother, and she's passed it on down to her son. So that's really wonderful. And I loved this picture. I thought it was so sweet.
Aww.
Just wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. And Cynthia Crafton with the cornbread salad. I had never heard of that before. There were a lot of recipes I'd never heard of before. They said, my family always liked it when I made this for potluck because it seemed no one knew what it was. So we always had plenty of leftovers to bring home, except we attended a wedding at a state park in Alabama where the reception was a covered dish meal. They took the lid off and someone yelled cornbread salad. Not only did we not have any leftovers to take home, but there was also none left by the time we got around to serving our plate.
Oh, no. There's a stampede.
So that must be pretty good. Cucumber salad. Michelle submitted that. Nice. Sounds really refreshing. And then here's a Greek lentil soup from Starkline. And she had a wonderful picture of her ancestor too, which I thought was wonderful. Just wonderful to see all these pictures and really hear the stories about all of these profiles that are out on WikiTree. And Kathy and her ancestor, Oscar Burge. And this one was very interesting to me. Oh. Pigeon peas and rice, and this is from the Bahamas.
Huh.
So Peter Roberts submitted this recipe.
Well, that looks good.
Yeah. So this recipe is said to have originally come from the Nassau Harbor pilot. Bahamians, I can never pronounce that for some reason. My tongue gets tied. Let their dogs lick the pot clean. So that is why they become called Royal Bahamian potcakes. My family's precious potcake is shared with this recipe. And there he is with his ancestor, Caroline Weathered. Okay, we can pass that one by. All right, and then let's see. We have snacks. Some wonderful snacks.
For the next thon.
Yeah, there we go. So another thing I hadn't really heard about, beet pickled eggs. I'd heard of pickled eggs, but not beet pickled.
Is there a picture? I would bet they would be bright red.
Yeah, there they are. Yeah. So she says, my great-grandmother, Mary Catherine Rogers Smee, really liked pickled eggs. They were a part of a conversation where she said that her father, William A. Rogers, had always claimed the family was Pennsylvania Dutch. How true that has turned out to be. If I knew then what I know now, I would have asked her a lot more questions. Mm-hmm. Isn't that true?
We all have those conversations we wish we'd had.
And there she is, Mary Smee and her family tree. It's so wonderful that we can have all these different dimensions to see these ancestors by.
Yeah.
And Richard Hill, we can see the actual handwritten recipe by his ancestor for the cheese crisps. Oh, Tree Climber says, I have beet pickled eggs in my fridge right now. So his father's mother received this recipe from a friend who was a queen bee of Kingston, Ontario society. At her gatherings in Kingston, she would delight her company with these cheese crisps made per her secret recipe. She agreed to let my grandmother have a copy of the recipe, but only provided that she never share it with anyone in Kingston. I copied out the recipe myself about 50 years ago, and it has been Hill family favorite ever since. So great. And there we have a picture of Gwen and Richard. So, so great. And Hugh Swanson has a couple recipes. This one is for dill pickles garlic. And you'll see the picture cookbook that the recipe card was in, and that's how she wrote it out. Dill pickles garlic. I thought was really interesting. And here he is with his grandmother.
Oh,
so great. Lots of warm fuzzies with this one.
For sure.
And this one had a really great, he really talks about this in more depth. So you guys will have to go check that story out. And the desserts. Okay, y'all, we have a lot of desserts. So Laura had provided a lot of different recipes, and so we'll just kind of touch on a few of them. I thought these ones sounded pretty good. The anise tea cookies.
Yeah,
sounds pretty good. So, and then Mindy had provided another recipe from another ancestor, and that's banana salad. And there she is with her. I think it's her mom, if I remember right. And Alexis, another recipe from Alexis, she provided brown candy. And she says, I like this ingredient in the recipe, a friend to help. Very cool. She says, this candy has been an Oklahoma tradition for over 100 years. Her mother-in-law may have been the main candy cook, but her father-in-law was the one who did all the stirring. Working together, this candy was perfect each and every time they made it. I like to remind my husband of what a great team his parents made, so he will be a good help when we make it. And there we go. That's her family member. And yes, Margaret, we have the floating island is in the recipe. Look. Butterscotch brownies. Oh my goodness, that sounds good.
Oh, great.
Marion had submitted this one. She says, Floyda Mabel Steiner McClure, my husband's maternal grandmother, was the youngest of 9 children. She was accomplished in the kitchen and very handy with a crochet hook or an embroidery needle. Grandma Floyda baked these blondish brownies during the Great Depression, and the recipe has been passed down through the generations ever since. And I thought that was a lovely photo that she was able to share.
That's lovely.
Yes, I tried to add to the recipe the location of where the person was born. Some kind of indicator of where they're from. So you'll see the state seal if it's from the US, and then the coat of arms if it's from a different country. So that's kind of a theme I tried to incorporate. I love this one. My Aunt Dottie's carrot cake is amazing. The funny thing is, both my mom and aunt were lifelong members of Tops, Take Off Pounds Sensibly. And my aunt got this recipe from a fellow Tops member back in the 50s. She couldn't remember her name when I asked her years ago if I could use a recipe and submit it to our county fair. It won Best in Show, by the way. So that's great. I love carrot cake.
Me too.
Another one to try. I just like the whole book, basically. You just need to go through it. And here she is, Beverly Ditburner with Dortha Howard. Chocolate roll. Somebody say chocolate.
Oh.
I'm there.
Yes, please.
Slide me up. My husband's grandmother, Eunice Alexander Hinnon, brought this every Christmas. Eunice lived to be over 100 years old, so we enjoyed it for many years. My daughter has had such wonderful memories of her great-grandmother bringing her delicious chocolate roll that she now makes it a family Christmas tradition. There she is.
Huh.
Alexis always has so many great pictures.
Yes.
Christmas pudding. Greg Slade. Yeah, so, yeah, just great. What can we say? There's so many great recipes. Try. Cream cheese cookies. Laura had a lot of cookie recipes that she shared with us, so that was really cool. And divinity. I remember my mom making divinity every year when I was a kid.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah. So here we have another great picture of the different. And Mindy. Hi, Mindy. And here's one from Pat Brunson. This is her recipe.
Yeah.
She's in the chat if anybody has a question for her. 5-in-1 cookies. I thought this was interesting.
Yeah, it's a choose your own adventure recipe.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Very cool. And here we go, Margaret. Here is your grandmother's floating island recipe. Thank you so much for your submissions, everybody. Mary Ada Woods James was an excellent cook, and anything she made was delicious. This recipe was for special occasions like Christmas. And here we go. A picture of Margaret and Mary. French vanilla cookies. Yum. She says, I don't come from a glorious food heritage like so many WikiTree's. I grew up in the United States, Midwest, Ohio, and Michigan, where we ate casseroles and a bunch of things that came in cans. Meat was cooked until it resembled a hockey puck, or we had some unseasoned, dried out roast of beef or pork. In my family, even brand name ketchup was considered too spicy, so we used an off-brand. This cookie recipe was from a dear friend of my mother, Doreen Armstrong Stew. Is it Stew?
Is it Stew?
It's Uewe.
I think so. I think I remember that.
My mom originally got the recipe in the late 1960s or early 70s. My dad and I were the cookie eaters. I like that. That was her job.
It's an important job.
And I was definitely the cookie baker. These cookies were considered quite unusual, probably due to the use of the cream of tartar, which in itself was an unusual ingredient in our world. I have no idea why the recipe was called French, except possibly that title made it sound fancier in the late 1960s in Midland, Michigan.
Your guess.
And there she is. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. German ginger molasses cookies. Another good cookie recipe. Anything with ginger, I usually like, and molasses. I love molasses cookies.
Mm-hmm.
ginger biscuits. This one was really a neat one. She shared that she was taken as a babe in arms to her grandmother's house about 1941. She grew up there until she joined the WRAF at the age of 17 and a half. My grandmother was born in Hull in 1893, and she was a great cook. She taught me to cook, sew, knit, and crochet. Grandma baked her own bread, cakes, biscuits, and made fantastic Yorkshire puddings. Whenever she baked a fresh batch of bread, my uncle and I would cut into a loaf still hot from the oven, and she would tell us, "You will get collywobbles." My favorite biscuits were her ginger biscuits, which she made often when I was a child. Sometimes they were crisp and crunchy. Sometimes they were soft and chewy, depending on how long they were left in the oven. Interesting. Either way, they were always delicious, dunked in a cup of tea.
Oh.
And I love the picture she has of her with her ancestor.
Yes, that is a wonderful one.
And then she said, this is from her, I think, 80th birthday. So I thought that was just so wonderful. Mona Hall. And this one, you'll see it's actually some of these images are attached to the cookbook space page. Bartley uploaded them directly there. So that was great. And he talks about, this one is special to me because of my mother's handwritten note on it. She remembered Etta serving these, and then when she learned that my mother liked tea, she would serve them to my mother with tea. The significance is that Etta was from England. So I just thought that was so sweet. Etta was the wife of Dad's first cousin, Willis Jarboe. When we visited at their house, Etta usually had these cookies in her cookie jar. When she found out I liked tea, she would serve me these cookies and tea. So sweet.
Yeah.
Lemon Jello frosted salad. Lemon. I love lemon. And there we have a picture of it.
Oh, that looks great.
A vintage Jello recipe has been part of the family for more than 70 years, and it's on its way to becoming a tradition. I love it. It comes from the days when Jello recipes included grated carrots, shredded cabbage, and other raw vegetables, and nuts, as well as fruit. That's great. This dish needs real heavy whipping cream and Parmesan cheese to make it work. The subtle, tangy taste of the cheese and the unsweetened cream offset the overall sweetness. That's really interesting.
Clever.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there she is, Donna Kimball. And that was just part one of the desserts. There's still more desserts. There's a lot of desserts. Molasses cookies. I was excited to see this recipe. And there we have. I like this picture. I thought that was cute. Yeah. That looks really good. She says, for as long as I can remember, we have made Chrissy Myrtle's molasses cookies as our gingerbread. As a child, I can remember pressing currants for eyes and buttons after my mother had piped on fine dots of icing. As we would bake, my mother would tell us stories about her grandmother. They're so true. You know, you get to cooking together as a family in the kitchen, and that's, you know, the time to talk about family and share those stories.
For sure.
She says she wished she knew when Chrissy started baking these cookies. If she got them from her mother, if they traveled with the Vint family over the Appalachian Mountains from West Virginia to Northwest Ohio. So, yeah, learning more about the family. And then she has a picture of her here with her. Oh. Molded green salad, aka moldy green salad. I thought this was really cute. Kate had submitted this one. And we have the handwritten recipe picture. And then here's what it looks like. I thought this was really funny. It's an essential part of a balanced Thanksgiving dinner. A spoonful of moldy green eaten straight out of the fridge in the middle of the night is one of the great pleasures of life. And there she is. Mom John Mary Gregory. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. She says she didn't love cooking, but she had 5 children, so it wasn't really an option not to, right? She did make absolutely divine turkey gravy. Her secret ingredient was a ton of salt and a pie crust, a great pie crust. I assume she got this god-awful sounding recipe from some 1950s magazine. It's a classic mid-century American. When I was a kid, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. What kid would want to eat moldy green salad? One Thanksgiving as a teenager, I tried to bite on a dare and fell in love. I know it sounds atrocious, but it's truly fabulous. I can't have Thanksgiving dinner without it. And that's a wonderful picture.
It is.
And Noel's, another cookie recipe from Laura. And the ancestor there was Dorothy Walter. And we had a few peach desserts. So there's quite a few of those here for us. If you like peaches, you're in luck. We have peach cobbler with a picture.
Yum.
Looks really yummy. My great Aunt Ruby was a fantastic cook. When we were kids, Aunt Ruby and Uncle Perry would visit. It was so exciting because that meant they were going to have peach cobbler. It was like the sun coming out. Aunt Ruby and peach cobbler, always a reliable event. That was really sweet. And there she is. There's Aunt Ruby.
Ah.
And peach cream pie. Oh, goodness. I'm hungry for peaches now, everybody. Thank you. And there we have a picture of it. Lots of peaches.
Yeah, too bad we're there that we passed the peach season, but
I know, right? This is another recipe that my mother added to the family food tradition. I remember her making these pies 2 at a time on hot days in August and September when local peaches were in season. We especially like the Freestone variety called Red Haven. More than 60 years later, it's a family favorite. That's great. And there's Donna Kimball again. And now we have a peach dessert. These are all peach desserts, but this is called peach dessert from Dina. Is it Dina? Yeah, Dina Cross. So she says, instead of birthday cake, my sister and I would ask for this dessert. And there she is. I thought that was such a cute picture.
Oh, it is.
Wonderful, wonderful. Pecan fudge log. Woohoo! More desserts. We love our desserts, apparently. Prince of Wales cake from Margaret. And this is the same one we were talking about earlier. I think Estella was ladylike in every way and hated to get messy. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you saw the dress she was wearing, I mean, it probably had ruffles all the way down to her wrists. And
yeah, look at that. She does look very ladylike and beautiful. 1875 to 1959 for her. Pumpkin chiffon pie. Ooh.
That's seasonal.
Yeah, it's right about the right season too.
Exactly.
I want to see some pictures of y'all making this. My grandmother, we called her Other Mom, would make 4 of these on holidays. There were 4 adults in my household, my parents and grandparents, and 4 kids. So each of us would get half a pie to ourselves to eat as we chose. This is the best pumpkin pie I've ever tasted. Even my mother-in-law loves it, and she doesn't like pumpkin pie. A number of years ago, my son asked me for the recipe as he wanted to take it to a holiday gathering, recalling how much he loved it when I made it when he was growing up. It was the hit of the party. And there she is. Beautiful picture.
Oh, yeah.
Raisin spice cake. My husband was allergic to eggs. My aunt gave me this recipe in 1982 when I married. She wrote on it, I have used this recipe for 51 years, and my mother and grandmother before me, so it is well over 100 years old.
That's, wow. What a wedding gift.
Yeah. There she is. Rena Smith. And seafoam candy. I thought this one sounded really interesting. From Sally Kimball. And the ancestor was Mildred Lamka. Again, this is another one. A recipe that they made at Christmas time. They usually ate chocolate fudge first. My grandmother never used nuts when she made seafoam candy, but some recipes call for adding pecans, and I think walnuts would also go well with the butterscotch flavor. And there she is. Shells. I saw this and I was like, shells?
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Yeah, I'm thinking of like pasta shells, but it's in the dessert section. So
that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So my grandmother Estelle told me that in Norway, cookie recipes were traditionally passed down from mother to daughter. Since my great-grandmother had only sons, she passed down her mother's cookie recipes to her only daughter-in-law in America. My grandmother, having no respect for that tradition, gave the recipe to all her grandchildren when we came over to her house to make cookies for Christmas. One tradition she did insist upon, however, was that we mix all the dough by hand to give it the proper texture. I did the same when my grandchildren came over to my house to make Christmas cookies. Even today, I always mix them by hand. So 4 generations, I think we're looking at. That's so wonderful. And there's the picture. Sour cream drop cookies. And this is another of her ancestors, Margaret Robe's ancestors. Great grandma Eliza Ann was not as good of a cook as her daughter-in-law, but she tried. I like that. I thought that was funny. Eliza was the pastor's wife and submitted a recipe to the Brownsville, Oregon Presbyterian Church Ladies Missionary Society Cookbook. That's a mouthful. In 1909. In her recipe for sour cream drop cookies, a key ingredient, flour, was left out, as I discovered when I tried to make it. No problem. I went to my mother's vintage 1950 Betty Crocker cookbook and supplied the flour from that recipe. Eliza's nephews, Cecil and Leland Robe, once saw her blow her nose into her dish towel, after which they begged off dinner. Again, the personalities of
exactly.
Through. That's so great. Streusel layered coffee cake. This looked pretty good too. Yeah. Michelle gave this one. Every Easter, our family would attend sunrise church service. After church, we would gather for a large family breakfast. And besides the dyed, hard-boiled Easter eggs, we would always have this coffee cake. It was a family favorite and one I always looked forward to having. While it is very easy to make, we rarely had it other than on Easter Sunday, which made it all the more special. So those are just some of the recipes that are out there. Go check them out. Of course, everything at WikiTree is free. So this recipe book is free for y'all to enjoy.
What a wonderful gift from the community to the community.
Exactly. It's wonderful. So just want to touch base again with everybody. The next up on your schedule for today is Greg Clark is going to be giving his presentation, Genealogy and Mathematics, Where Two Passions Meet. So that sounds really great. Yeah. And then Sandy has Journey Through Appalachia Project. So that is also going to be great. I'm really glad that these will be available always because there's so much great content to watch.
And everything that you're seeing today will be available on YouTube forever.
Yeah.
So, and there'll probably be a WikiTree Day 2023 playlist, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I was just going to go to the welcome page because there is, of course, the on-demand section that you can go to. And it has all of the content that was from this weekend. So if you want to see the content from today specifically, you can just skip right through. And like I didn't get a chance to see a couple of these first ones, so I want to go back in the next few days and try to catch up on some of that content.
Mm-hmm.
So as content is finished showing, then it will be made available on this on-demand page. And that's, again, available from the Help WikiTree Day welcome page. And of course, we have games still going on today. We have bingo, I think, is coming up. Actually, I think it's already passed. Yeah. But there is another word search, wiki word search, which was really a lot of fun. If there's another one coming up in not too much longer. So stay tuned for that. And then the link for Discord, the WikiTree Day and Symposium Discord is in here. And there's games there as well. Betsy and I got,
yeah,
we both played it.
Win. It's just like Scrabble. So.
And then Blazinates is a lot of fun too. It goes really quick. So go check those out. And Betsy, you did this great page on Heritage Hunt. Really a great idea. So just really pretty easy actually to just kind of look around your home for these things and then email in the picture, a photo of them.
You'll be entered in the drawing.
Yeah. So that's pretty great.
Yeah.
So you can play that anytime too. So go check out that page, the welcome page. There's also a link there to the store with all the great merchandise, which you're wearing one shirt and I'm wearing another. So there's
aprons,
glasses. And then the link for the community cookbook, of course, is there too. So thank you everybody so much for tuning in. Did we have any questions that we needed to go through at all?
I didn't see any.
Okay.
We had, a lot of commentary, and I mean, this was just like a like sitting down with a cup of coffee and chatting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, thank you everybody, and stay tuned for more content on the channel. Be sure to give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't already so you can get those notifications. We'll see you around.
Thank you.